And she clapped. She said, wow, Ajit. And she had won our clothes basket somewhere close by. She said, wonderful throw. It landed exactly where you intended, on the back of the sofa. But you see that little basket over there. Next time you try it, I'm sure you will be able to do it. Wow, what a throw. And I got the message. And from next time onwards, I improved my behavior. So this Toastmasters experience rubs off on non-Toastmasters also some way.
Hello and welcome to the UNO. We have our guest, distinguished Toastmaster Ajit, with us. It's really great joy and privilege to have you as our guest, distinguished Toastmaster Ajit. So let me start our interview or the series' first episode by asking, what is the one word that comes to your mind when you hear Toastmasters?
Camaraderie is a word which I would use, because that is what attracted me to Toastmasters first. It was not so much the speaking skills or the other skills or the leadership skills which Toastmasters is so famous about, but it's the friendship of people who are joined together, who come together across all walks of life, across all age groups, no gender bias, and with a simple feeling that we need to improve ourselves and we need to help others to improve themselves, so that together as a group we will flourish. And there's such a lot of positive energy in most of the Toastmaster meetings that I have attended, is that I used to attend it after my office hours in Oman when I used to work. I mean, I used to leave work at about 7:30 and the meeting used to start at 8. And I used to be pretty tired while entering the meeting. But I used to come back absolutely refreshed and recharged at the end of the meeting because of the interaction with a lot of positive-minded people, which you actually grow in your enthusiasm, your energy, and take it. And obviously, other people told me that even though I had entered the meeting with a wry face and with a long drawn face, I left the meeting with a smile. And many people actually drew some inspiration from me also. I didn't know whether it existed in me or not, but they later on told me that they felt happy about meeting me. So it's this comradeship or camaraderie. It's something which I value very much. Apart from leadership, apart from communication skills, which is done in a very structured manner. Thirdly, the kind of nuggets of wisdom which you get, because people put in a lot of effort in preparing their speeches. And the Toastmaster puts in a tremendous amount of effort in embellishing the theme which he had selected. So you get nuggets of wisdom all throughout those 1.5, 2 hours, however long the meeting would be. And you come to hear various viewpoints, differing viewpoints, opposing viewpoints, all in a very civilized manner, not dealing with contentious topics, dealing with religion and politics or sex or something like that. So the discord is not much. There is concord, and there's good music made out of that concordance.
That's really well put, sir. And that really explains the experience that you have. And that's almost 22 years now. Like you said, you started in 1999 and you achieved the distinguished Toastmaster status in 2002. So that's hardly within 3 years of the journey that you started. So what was the feeling when you actually achieved the distinguished Toastmaster status? So did it change your perspective towards the Toastmasters environment in general?
Yes and no. I think the first reaction which you asked me was like, yeah, something like that. Because at that point, we were 4 leading Toastmasters, not leading as such, but leading in terms of the number of speeches we had given. And there was a kind of a friendly competition as to who would become the first DTM of Oman. And I was fortunate to be the one. But for that, every one of us, every one of the four of us used to take extra efforts. Like I was a member of 4 clubs. So I used to go from club to club delivering speeches, keeping a tab on how the other guys are doing. And everybody did this sort of the same thing. So it was a friendly competition. So there was a feeling of elation after having achieved something which you have set your heart on. Not that it was a great deal or something. All those guys are still good friends and they are excellent speakers. In fact, I would say some of them are much better speakers than myself. But the thing which I learned from that is not to take these competitions too seriously. Because later on, I realized that I did this journey from joining Toastmasters till getting a DTM in about just over 2 years. And that was a journey which was fraught with haste. So later on, when I reflect back on my performances, even though some people do remember some of the speeches, even after 10 years or something like that, and that always gives you a feeling of elation and satisfaction that you said something, you might yourselves might not be remembering it, but somebody else remembers it, and the key sentences and the moral of the story, etc. But the fact is that I felt that I hurried too much and I could have paid more attention to refining my speeches and making them more palatable, more packed with more emotions, expressions, all the facets which Toastmasters manuals teach us about. Those need to be implemented to a higher degree. And that's what I felt later on. So to anybody aspiring for a DTMship, I would give the unsolicited advice that please don't hurry the journey. Enjoy the journey. The slower, the better. You might become a better speaker at the end of the journey than somebody who has just hurried through his speeches, 40 speeches and all that, and just for the kind of emblem or medal for that. So that is not important. The journey is more important than the final medal.
That's really apt for what we have been experiencing so far. I mean, at times, rather than the destination, it's the journey that gives us more joy. And I'll stick to this part of you starting in 1999 with your Toastmaster journey, achieving Distinguished Toastmaster in 2002. So in this span of 22 odd years, if you were to choose one thing that has remained constant in your Toastmasters life in all these years, and one thing that has kept on changing over the years, so what would these two things be?
What has remained constant is the core values of Toastmasters, which is one of the best values and one of the core values, according to me, is sincerity and listening with sincerity as well as with empathy. There are other people who are not in need of your opinion or your judgment. That is something which Toastmasters does teach you about. But you have to deliver those judgments or suggestions for improvements in a very empathetic way, in a way that will not hurt their egos. So that value remains unchanged through any of the Toastmasters meeting I have seen. Basic structure of the meeting has remained unchanged over the Toastmasters in those 22 years. I mean, it's still the same. As regards the change, the biggest change which I thought was in the education system itself. Leadership has not changed much, although it has grown more and more. So as you evolve from a smaller state to a bigger state, those kind of issues do come in. Sometimes politics also comes in, which was not there when there was a small cohesive group of people. There was pahle aap kind of a tahzeeb which was there. Whereas as the clubs become more numerous, there is more competition, people attach more value to the directorships and other things. So there is a bit of politics which sometimes spoils the human relations, which is not the key element of Toastmasters. Toastmasters, it's supposed to be like a bonding agent, like cement, not like something which will put people apart. And elections sometimes do that, but Toastmasters, having been brought up in that kind of an atmosphere of universal brotherhood or sisterhood, the bitterness is much less in Toastmasters as compared to other organizations. So coming back to your question, I strayed a little bit about what had changed. pathways has changed. The old system, the old manual, I found, personally speaking, I mean, other people would be entitled to their opinion, and they might be correct in thinking that way, that pathways is definitely an improvement, and it is an improvement in some ways. But to me, at least till the first 10 lectures, 10 speeches, the old manual used to give us a very structured way of first introducing yourself, breaking the ice. That remains the same. But for every pathway, you have to do that again. So you have to keep on breaking the ice like an ice-breaking ship. So that is one. Then the second one was speaking with sincerity. I mean, even after 20 years, I do remember all those steps which I took. And speaking with sincerity was the best of the speeches I found for most of the people. In fact, some people who met me after 10, 15 years, they also said that, I remember that speech of yours. And I said, which one? The second one, in which I had spoken about my own experiences with sincerity. Then, of course, the third, fourth, and this thing, there are various facets like a diamond, uncut diamond. There are various facets which are cut and polished. So there is one facet regarding vocal variety, another about bringing in gestures, another one about using flowery language and figures of speech. And then there is what we used to call it as a rainbow speech, which is speech number 7, which incorporated all those elements. Speaking with logic and body, that also used to come in the third speech. And then the inspiring speech, motivating speech used to be at the culmination of that. So to me, that old system of 10 speeches in a very structured manner was really the correct way of learning. Now, of course, we have 5 speeches in each pathway, and that also, but the repetition of the first icebreaker sometimes gives you a feeling that you're repeating the thing. So what has remained unchanged is the ethos and the values of Toastmaster. What has changed is the sort of more practical or more superficial way of learning. But both are good.
So on this note, to be perfectly candid, I'm very eager to hear the second speech that you gave, particularly knowing that it's been quite a while that you gave a speech yourself. So this is a platform to encourage. I would honestly request.
I have been resisting the pressure to speak in a meeting for very long, because I think some wise man has already said that if you start speaking, people might know that you are a fool. If you just keep quiet, people might not know that you are a fool, and they might continue with their old assessment of you. So, of course, I will do that. And the second speech which I had given, which I remember, was about a good Samaritan feeling and all that. And the whole speech is quite, I mean, it will take a lot of time for doing that, but I will definitely share it with you and maybe with our club one of these days.
Sure. Definitely looking forward to that. Well, you see, almost every Toastmaster that I've come across or interacted has a quote that they follow or try to follow. So what's your quote that you follow?
The quote which I try to follow is, you must have heard that story of that. I mean, the story is long, but the essence is, even this will pass. So trying to be equanimous. I'm not successful at all in that. I do get disturbed by day-to-day ups and downs and happenings, etc. Or even a bad evaluation or somebody criticizing me and things like that. But the way to remember to go forward is to remember that even this will pass. So if you are in a bad state, think that this will pass, so that you will be able to sustain living in a bad state in a more palatable manner. And if you are in a good state, enjoy it. Even say that this is not going to be permanent, so that will also pass. Good state also will pass, but in that good state, try to enjoy being in the moment and take the enjoyment as much as possible. Like nowadays, I'm spending more time with my granddaughter, who is just over 1 year old. Just started speaking a little bit, started running about. So I take immense pleasure in sort of immersing myself in activities with her, because that is going to pass. After a few years, she might not be addressing me as fondly as she is doing now. May or may not happen, but I'm not bothered about that. I'm bothered about what is happening now. So even this will pass is a quote which I think has helped me a great deal in dealing with the ups and downs, vicissitudes of whatever life throws at you, and be more equanimous, trying to be.
It's really, something that makes us wonder in these times in particular. It's fine. Everything will pass. It's a really apt message right now. On that note, towards the conclusion, I would just ask, what's the one short message that you want to give to our audience today?
Try to be a good evaluator. I believe that most of your audience will be Toastmasters, so they would be quite familiar with the way we evaluate things in life, in our meetings. So the first thing to remember while evaluating is that the first thing is you have to listen, and you have to listen with empathy. You have to listen with full attention. So that is a skill if you can develop as your association with Toastmasters would give you. That is the best thing which can happen. So learn to listen with empathy and with attention. And secondly, don't believe, and this I have learned to with great peril to myself, to my mental happiness, etc., that normally I have seen that men like me, more than women, they are more interested in providing solutions. We always think of ourselves like, I mean, at least I used to think of myself as a solution provider. So whenever my wife used to come to me with some long tale or something, I used to stop her without letting her speak completely her mind. I said, stop. So let us do this, or you do this and that. And she used to get so exasperated that, Ajit, I don't want you to just give me solutions. I'm not asking you that. I just want you to listen. And later on, if you have to offer something, that is again something which you can learn from Toastmasters, is offering constructive criticism in a way that will not affect or hurt the ego of the person who is at the receiving end. Because, and this has helped me to a great extent in my professional life as well, because as a senior executive of my company and sometimes in charge of operations, I needed to sort of assess other people's, give them reprimands also. So doing those reprimands in the Toastmasters way definitely helped me. And that is a skill which first was presented to me by my association with Toastmasters, that your, what we call it as a sandwich approach or CRC approach. Come and just say good things about whatever good things the person has done so that you're on a better footing. Next, you sort of give your recommendations in a way as much as possible in a practical manner, that instead of saying you could have done better, you could have done better how and when and where, in which particular manner, mode, modality, all that thing should be there in your suggestion for improvement. And finally, end with a pat on the back. And that really has helped me not only in my professional life, but also in my family life while dealing with my children, because they know that dad is always coming with some advice and all that. And nowadays, of course, they have started seeing through this. So whenever I start praising them, I said, we know what is coming. So maybe I'll have to find another trick for doing that. But with my wife, definitely it used to help. That the first thing is you listen, and if she is in a agitated state of mind, half the agitation would go away just by the observation that I'm listening to her carefully and attentively. Then the other part followed about constructive criticism or suggestions. So that's the takeaway from Toastmasters, the art of listening and evaluating.
I'm sure the Toastmasters audience in general is going to, every person is going to relate to this and is going to now understand why we fondly call you the Dumbledore of our club. Because it's not just the wise words, but the way you, convey it to the audience as well.
Sometimes, sorry, I mean, I should have listened to you attentively.
I was just
a thought came to mind. My wife was not a Toastmaster. In fact, she used to find sometimes the Toastmasters, the whole thing quite silly at sometimes. And she used to come after attending meetings with me. That guy was talking rubbish, man. And you all were clapping like that was the end of the world. And it was the best speech you had heard. I said, that's the way, the basic philosophy, like a toddler learning to walk, and you encourage him, don't pull his legs. when he is vulnerable. So all that is fine. And she also imbibed it in some way, even though she was never a Toastmaster. I used to have this habit which used to irk her no end of coming back from office and taking off my shirt and tie and throw it on the back of the coach sofa. And we used to have fights on that many times. So one day she tried this Toastmasters approach, and it told me later on that I have tried today the Toastmasters approach, and it seems it has worked. Because what happened is I did the same thing, and she clapped. She said, "Wow, Ajit." And she had our clothes basket somewhere close by. She said, "Wonderful throw. It landed exactly where you intended on the back of the sofa. But you see that little basket over there. Next time you try it, I'm sure you will be able to do it. Wow, what a throw." And I got the message. And from next time onwards, I improved my behavior. So this Toastmasters experience rubs off on non-Toastmasters also some way.
That reminded me of my experience of the CRC approach that I tried to use on my mother's lunch that she cooked the other day. And this is a heads up to everyone who is going to try. Don't try it at home, because it's not always that they are going to appreciate the CRC approach. But it's like I said, it's not just the wise words with you. It's the way that you convey the intended message so conveniently and so seamlessly. So it's like a conversation that should never end. And it's a rare quality that we get to see in people. So it was, like I said, a great honor to have you as one of our guests in the series. And it's a great moment of pride to have this discussion with you.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, Ashish. And this is, of course, a great initiative that you guys have launched. I think it is probably the first time. I don't think other Toastmaster clubs have had this kind of a interview series of their own Toastmasters or something. Of course, we go and interview the great guys who win the competitions and all that is there. But it's something which is making people, presenting them in your own homes by virtue of these virtual conferences or interactions. So great initiative. Whosoever thought of it, and I'm sure that you deserve a great part of making sure that it was conceived and now being executed successfully. I really look forward to watching the whole of the series and wishing you all the best to you and your team. All the best.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, Ganpati Bappa Moria.
Moria.
Okay.